And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest edition of the American Awakening. I'm Michael Herzog, your host, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours. Now, as always, there's a litany of new postings at theamericanawakening.org for your reading pleasure, put there by my fine producer. And don't forget that chat button for sharing your thoughts among like-minded people. And the call-in listener line, folks, is 351-999-5116. By the way, quick announcement here. Janet Phelan is back home after her excursion to try for asylum, and she will be joining us next Wednesday at the bottom of the hour. Now, the title of today's show, folks, is Hate Speech and Heinous Happenings. I think it's going to be a really interesting show. It's very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult working side by side and hand in hand with somebody that's halfway around the world. But I think we do a pretty good job of it, Brendan O'Connell and I. He shoots me articles over, and they're always bombshell, and there's no surprise today. He's got a few more, and we're going to go into some interesting topics, folks. But looking into my crystal ball, the fog is clearing, and I can make out I see the grand poobah of all things come with his imminent wisdom, sipping his Nescafe. Brendan O'Connell, are you with me, sir?
Oops, sorry, yes, I am. The microphone was muted again. I did it again.
You did it. Yeah. That's okay. I keep missing the breaks by a minute, so we're on the same page there.
I did it again.
Sorry,
Brittany.
How's your week been going so far over there on the other side of the world?
The fun and games has begun again. I spend all day trying to fix the computer again. So I just want to get this. I've got to go away soon on a visa run, and I've got to get this video done. So, well, 2 laptops is not enough.
Yeah, this is the second getaway run that you've made since you and I have met up with each other. I think it was back a bit around mid-April, I think, when I finally tracked you down. It's been getting on 6 months, I think. April, May, June, July, August, 5 months. Yeah, so time flies when you're having fun. Okay.
Yes, taking on China's fun too. China, Israel, and Russia, and sitting in Malaysia. It's great.
Yeah, well, let me remind the audience once again, the title for today's show, Hate Speech and Heinous Happenings. And speaking of heinous happenings, I want you to, now, I didn't know this. Brendan sent me, 4 or 5 articles here, and a couple of which I was waiting on, didn't get, and I just went back in there and looked. So I haven't even had a chance to read them, so we're going to go through them together. But this is huge, folks, and I want you to pay very, very close attention to this because you're going to see, as Brendan goes through this here, what's really happening to this country, what's really happening among our intelligence, what's really happening and who's controlling this. But with that, where do you want to start here? You want to go with Qatar's Emir heads to Turkey for talks with Erdogan? Do you want to go with Washington being isolated after its economic attacks?
The China one, and the CIA compromised.
Okay, that one would be the CIA falsely believed. Listen to this, folks. The CIA falsely believed that it was invincible in China. And here's how its spies were reportedly discovered and killed in one of those biggest blows to the agency. Go ahead, Brendan. Give us an overview of that.
Yeah, this was sent to me by Shayan, an Iranian kid over there in the US, Shia. So we've got Sunni Shia, we've got Iranians and Arabs and all sorts, and also Joseph, of course, and Jalil and all those guys who we still informally chat and share links, and that's the power of a bunch of people sharing links. But this is from August the 16th, just recently, 2018. Business Insider, Military and Defense by David Choi. The CIA falsely believed it was invincible in China. Here's how its spies were reportedly discovered and killed in one of the biggest blows to the agency. A new foreign policy report cites sources detailing how the communication system between the CIA spies and handlers in China nearly a decade ago was compromised. Now, I'm just reading, but just before I keep reading for the next minute, people remember the Israeli high technology. Remember the Telpiot program, Unit 8200, all the software that's being written, Mike Adams at Real Video, where I can't upload. You might want to understand who's writing the code for his Real Video site. Alex Jones's new app, which everyone wants to put on, the number one news app in America or all over the world now, is Alex Jones's news app. That hysterical little has now managed to get his news app number one. He's about to die apparently, but Google and Apple forgot to take his news app off their sites. And you can guarantee Unit 8200 graduates wrote the code for that app, which you now have sitting on your phone. So this is the result of the relationship with Israel and its domination of high technology. I'll keep going. The vulnerability contributed to the deaths of at least 30 spies, the sources said. This internet-based system imported, right, here's the quote, this internet-based system imported from operations in the Middle East. So it's from the Middle East, this software. It's not from Saudi. It's not from Greece.
Let me interject here. This smells of the dancing Muslim as opposed to the dancing Israelis, the quote by Trump. So continue on, Brendan. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not dancing Muslims writing this, by the way. So it's from Israel. Yeah, it was apparently brought to China under the assumption that it could not be breached. But according to the report, the program actually had telltale links to the CIA that would have allowed China to work out what was going on. Now, people, in this brilliant article, and these people know what's going on. When they wrote this article, they're saying, hello, everyone, Israel's a problem. It's catching on. Mainstream articles are now saying, Haaretz, the big mainstream news outlet in Israel, is now saying that, it's saying Trump's going after China on trade is going to affect us. Oh, really? Oh, really? So once you understand the deep ties between Israel and China, you're going to understand what's going on. China and Russia, number one enemies, apparently, according to Secretary of Defense Mattis and the president himself, reluctantly, of course, are telling you that these are number one enemies, military and economic competitors. And there is Israel, bold as brass. There's Netanyahu strutting the stage at AIPAC. We're running all the high technology and we're going to deal with Israel as much as we like. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. He's not even blushing. People are crying out. And if that doesn't tell you the power of Israel, above and beyond blackmail of Congress people, they have kill switched, totally infiltrated every single government department, high technology military contractor, the CIA, the Department of Justice, via this Promise software and all the offshoots of that old Promise software, all backdoored. And now they're handing all that technology to China, and China is doing what it needs to do. You can't blame China; it's executing its spies. That's it's protecting itself. But Israel is a problem, as if we didn't know. And there is a gold article for the military personnel. Your listeners may know. You may have many ex and serving military listening. I'd say you've got more than you think. And intelligence personnel. This is the number one article I would have for this month. This is the article of the month. Thank you, Cheyenne. So if you want to read on or keep going on with that article, there's an primo example of how Israel is handing over information. Remember the KGB penetration of Israel, Russian spies. I mean, they're accusing, the Israelis themselves are accusing the Secretary of Defense, Avigdor Lieberman, best friend of Putin and best friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, as being a Russian spy. A whole bunch of them. They flooded when Russian Jews and alleged Jews, half of them aren't even Jewish, flooded into Israel. They were Soviet-level missile technicians. They were engineers. They were aeronautical engineers. They flooded into Israel, and they're filling the Intel CPU fabrication and design factory. They flooded in, and they're filling the Elbit systems, and they're building parts for the F-35, and they're shoving that tech back hand over fist to Russia and China. And there is a primo example of what the relationship with Israel is costing. It's a Soviet-era designed backdoor. Rothschild's private backdoor into the Western intelligence services, into the U.S. intelligence services, into the U.S. high technology sector. And that's Rothschild's private intelligence network operating through that Israeli backdoor. It's a primo article. Over to you.
Well, yeah, I'm going to have Michael post this at the end of the program on the website, but I want to just go with a couple more snippets out of this. It says, in the 2-year period starting in 2010, Chinese officials began accurately identifying the spies working for the United States, and the Chinese authorities rounded up the suspects and executed or imprisoned them before their handlers were able to determine what was going on. So you could tell the Chinese weren't guessing, one of the officials said in the report, because the Ministry of State Security were always pulling in the right people. When things start going bad, they went bad fast. So that's just a snippet, folks, of some of the stuff we have to share with you today, because Brendan, he had sent me back, I believe it was in April, that 235-page synopsis of the overview of what you had gone through. And I had never read it. I had just gone into the trial portion of it, and I started skimming over it today. And forgive me, Brendan, but I had a lot of stuff going on this morning, so I just got to it about 1:30, 2 o'clock this afternoon, and I went, holy crap, there is 235 pages worth of gold nuggets in there that we're going to have to start exploring little by little here over the next coming weeks, because there's no way we'll be able to get through it in one show. But that being said, let's get back to this. Okay, so that's one article that Brendan had sent me, which just goes to show, it proves beyond any doubt of what Brendan's been saying all along. But let's shift gears here, Brendan. You want to go to the next one? CIA falsely believed it was invincible in China. Is that or is that the same one?
That's the same one. And I'll just add this line. This throwaway encrypted program, which was assumed to be untraceable and separate from the CIA's main communication line, was reportedly used for new spies as a safety measure in case they double-crossed the agency. Unbeknownst to the CIA, however, this system could be used to connect with mainstream CIA communications used by fully vetted CIA sources. According to the report, the vulnerability would have even allowed Chinese intelligence agencies to deduce it was being used by the US government. So this was a specialist throwaway encryption program for new spies that they used, and it was separate from their main program. But what happened was there's a backdoor in it that was connecting to the main program, and it enabled a backdoor entry into the main program, and the Chinese were able to get in, identify their big spy network, 30 top spies, and they executed every single last one of them. And that is an example of promise. That is an example of Israel, Rafi Eitan, Bodansky, General Bodansky, the Binational Industrial Research and Development Foundation, the Binational Science Foundation, all of these different legislative bodies and setups, all to facilitate the transfer of high technology and secrets out of the United States into Israel, on into Russia, on into China and Iran, for the purposes of building up Rothschild's little Eurasian experiment, the Belt and Road Initiative. But if that doesn't get Americans flaming hot with anger, I don't know what will.
But Brendan, Israel's our ally, aren't they?
Oh yes, aren't they wonderful? Who needs enemies with friends like Israel?
Oh my God. Okay, let's shift gears here. Where are we going next? We're going to let's see. Washington's isolation, is that the one? Gets deeper after its economic attacks?
Sorry, say again? Sorry, I was distracted.
Oh, no, we're going to Washington's isolation gets deeper after its economic attacks. That's the Daily Sabak. What's that?
All right. Please forgive me. I told you I'd have problems. My tabs are crashing left and right.
Are we being interfered with here?
Yes, I mean my emails are coming through blank. It's all new. I think it possibly is Malaysia. I don't. Oh, there you go. Now my email just crashed. I told you we'd have problems. They're on me. My computer is. I need time to try and get things working.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we got to take a break here in about 30 seconds. So you want me to, I'm assuming you can't see the article right now, right?
No, tabs are crashing left and right, and my email client is now crashing.
Okay.
And my computer is not a normal computer. It's pretty secure, so.
Okay, well,
this isn't the local 12-year-old yeshiva student doing this.
All right, let's go. Let's take a break. We'll be back in 2 minutes, folks, with Brendan O'Connell. More about this. We're going to get into hate crimes, and we're going to get into heinous happenings. So stick around. More to come. Get your pencil and paper out. Another bombshell episode of The American Awakening. Be right back. All right, folks, we're back with my special Friday co-host, Brendan O'Connell, with more bombshell news, which is why he's getting screwed with. Have you been able to pull it up and read it, or you want me to go through there and you just jump in whenever you want, Brendan? Is Brendan on mute again?
And I've done it again, sorry. No, let's blame the Jews. I like blaming them, even if I did it.
Okay, all right, now can you view it now or not?
Yes, I can. I've got it back up.
All right, well, go ahead. Proceed.
This is from Joseph. Washington's isolation gets deeper after its economic attacks. This is by Sadid Urig. This is the Daily Sabah. It's just one of the columns to do with Turkey by a Turkish national. I'm not sure where she's based, but she's basically saying if those who remember Alexander Dugin, who was briefing the general staff in Russia many years ago, back in 92, 94, when he wrote his book, and excuse me, I've forgotten the name, but Alexander Dugin, good friends with Putin, of course, good friends with Iran, is calling and was good friends with Alex Jones, I might add, and he hasn't been on for a while, for about 6 months. Good friends with Richard Spencer. Dugin, of course, called himself a neo-Bolshevik at one stage, a cross between Bolsheviks and National Socialism, would you believe? But Dugin's there briefing the general staff, and his book basically said we've got to get, which is the old Stalinist dream, to control Eurasia. Russia would be the dominant force. They would get America to shrink back, become isolationist. They would dismantle NATO. And it gives a whole raft of things to be done, which is, of course, the Belt and Road Initiative. This was the Stalinist Eurasian dream, which Rothschild is funding through his proxies, Russia and China, and Iran, and Israel, of course. So when you see how that works and you see Trump's policies, which are now, I'm not necessarily against, there needs to be a bit of a trade war because the American taxpayer is getting shafted 1,000%. But what's the intent with Trump? Is it to have a legitimate trade war and sort this out, or is it to isolate America? And it is. It's forcing Germany to go with Iran and Russia. It's forcing people to get together, and Turkey especially saying, you know what, I doubt Turkey will do it because it's so embedded with NATO and Europeans and Israel. There's a lot of American equipment in there. It's hard to believe they'll just drop out and go with Russia. But if Israel's going with Russia, which it's bragging about, it's bragging openly, it's going with Putin, then Trump is fulfilling the Trump presidency, all backed by those Israeli firsters, the Sheldon Adelsons of this world, the old mega group of the Bronfmans. The mega group, of course, was intimately involved with Jonathan Pollard. It was a vast network of private business people, people embedded in the military contractors and so on, all running a KGB, filled with KGB spies running through Israel, Russian, Israeli, Jewish spies. We get that plan, that embedded plan that Trump appears to be, his administration, specifically his administration, stacked full of Israeli firsters, with just the odd bod, Mattis, we think is one of them, the odd bod kicking up a storm about things. So what we're having is this shrinking back. And I mean, you're getting it now in the newspaper, mainstream articles saying Washington's isolation, and that was the main goal. As Dugin says, we've got to isolate the United States, make it pull back so we can fill the void. And we're seeing that unfold right now as we speak. And it's being bragged about. It's in the open. Netanyahu's bragging about their new relationship with Russia. Russia's now saying, yeah, we agree, Iran, get out of the Middle East. Oh, fancy that. Fancy that. What did we say? We said Iran's going to get stabbed in the back by Russia. And no, Putin's the Messiah. The Messiah cometh. He's come to cleanse the temple. No, Putin's just another son of the City of London working closely to get this Eurasian Belt and Road Initiative happening, which I am not against, I might add. Asia must develop. It's all good, but there's no way Israel should be heading it. That should be Americans heading that high technology because the American taxpayers paid for it. They'd like that $150 billion a year that's being stolen out of the United States. They'd like that back in their pockets, please.
Okay. Did you want to cite any excerpts from this article?
No, why don't you do that? I'll let you do that.
Okay. Washington's isolation gets deeper after its economic attacks, folks. President Trump's economic attacks have already pushed different world powers closer, helping normalize their frozen partnerships and unite against U.S. hegemony. Washington has never been this isolated from the world community, taking its brutal financial attacks on different countries into account. A new ground for solidarity and partnership against this unlawful pressure on the world economy is being formed between various global powers, which include Germany, Russia, China, and perhaps the Gulf states, unquestionably Turkey, and maybe Iran. Now, following its announcement of sanctions on Iran, the United States tried to impose its policies on Turkey via an economic operation, which affected other states as well, and exchange rates have become a tool for Washington to force Turkey to accept its legal demands. However, Turkey's firm stance against this unlawfulness and the position of the Turkish people who stood up against Washington economic attacks on their country created an environment where a strong international position is about to be taken against the attack. So the United States is seen to be trying to establish a new generation hegemonic system in which it could beat Russia, China, and the EU, and Iran and Turkey through attacking their economy and finance institutions with manipulative moves. How do they do that with Israel involved, by the way, Brendan? They seem to be trying to do that, but the sanctions on Iran and the disputes over the defenses of the NATO system and the climate agreement and so on have been topics of quarrel between the transatlantic allies of NATO. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, together with EU institutions, have already taken strong measures against U.S. sanctions on Iran and declared that Brussels and member states will not let Washington put pressure on these EU companies. So United States President Donald Trump, who looked straight into the eyes of his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, turned his back on his European colleagues. Because of this political environment, the EU is now closer to Turkey and Iran than to the United States. In other words, the U.S. has become the backbone of the new global order in which all global powers can unite against the United States' irrational and undiplomatic actions, and the world financial system, which has been directly affected due to recent U.S. actions, will not let Washington be the elephant in the china shop. Meanwhile, Turkey overcame this economic operation thanks to its strong measures and the support of its people, and the crisis produced in Washington turned out to be an opportunity for Turkey to establish a new form of solidarity and cooperation, not only on a national scale, but also on international grounds. And speaking of that, by the way, have you heard anything about this pastor that was taken into custody and has been imprisoned in Turkey for a year and a half, and anything about Trump, increasing any sanctions or trade wars against Turkey for the pressure to release this pastor? Have you heard anything about that, Brendan?
No, but it's garbage. One thing I know about Turkey is it does exactly what it's told. It's always done exactly what it's told. So if Trump really wanted that pastor out, that pastor would be out in about 5 seconds, because NATO is all over Turkey, and if the Turkish powers that be get cocky, they start dying in the streets. They start getting shot in the head in the streets. So let's stop this rubbish that Turkey has any autonomy. It is as big a BITCH as anyone in the region, in fact, bigger. And I don't believe a word of it. If Trump wanted that pastor out, he'd be out. Boom, just like that.
Okay, so this is the Daily Sabah. Now, where is this out of? Is this, let's say, Sadat Aruk? Is that out of Turkey? This article?
I don't know. Never looked it up.
Oh, okay.
But I know she's a Turkish national, yeah.
Okay. All right. So you got that, folks. And moving right along here, let's see, there's another one. Hold on a minute.
So the Daily Sabah is a big column. It's a big column. It's got a lot of these.
Okay.
It's not some little obscure column that no one's heard of, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I get it. But wrap my head around this one, because I'm looking at this. I'm going to shift gears and go into this Steve Bannon trying to get on the disgraced Jeffrey Epstein's good side. Now, how does that tie into all of this?
I have no idea, but I do know this. Listen, here's the rub. Now, because most people don't listen to Jones, and I understand why it's painful, but I do. Every single day I download that 3 hours, and on my 3-hour walk, as painful as it is, I listen to Alex Jones, and I can tell you stories about the difficulty I have just downloading the material, and I'm walking along and it just stops because it's been deleted out of my phone. And I can tell you a whole story about what happened on YouTube to do with Alex Jones and Donald Trump, how I was being logged out every time I criticized him. Before I'd even finished entering my comment, I was logged out. So he gets protected at Google. Don't believe this garbage that he's hanging on by a thin thread and we're all going to die. All right. He just wants his Unit 8200 code written app in everyone's phone and to get everyone ready for the election. But my tabs have just crashed again, and it's to do with the hate speech legislation, which is another hot topic I've had my computer crashed over. I don't want to get too diverted. Sorry, can you please repeat the question? It's just there's stuff happening in front of me and I'm getting majorly distracted.
That's okay. No, I was just asking you this article, Steve Bannon trying to get on the disgrace
yes.
Jeffrey Epstein's good side. I was wondering if that at all correlated with. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's connect a few dots.
Okay.
So you have Roger. Let's look at who's around Alex Jones, who's the main propaganda outlet for the Israeli first, Donald Trump, who's basically making Benjamin Netanyahu the president of the United States and all that Netanyahu represents. What does Netanyahu represent? Apart from being the loyal son of the City of London and Lord Joachim Rothschild, apart from that, he's allegedly loyal. I wonder how much power Rothschild directly has over Netanyahu and his crew. Netanyahu is part of a specific crew of Israeli military intelligence, military contractors. He's basically an Israeli spy. He's an Israeli intelligence asset. He's right up there. He has tea and biscuits with the people who have their physical fingers on the buttons. So it's like when we call somewhere a police state, we don't call it a Supreme Court state or a lawyer state or a business state. We call it a police state. Why? Because the police rule. The police specifically have the powers of arrest. The Supreme Court Justice of the United States does not have any powers of arrest. Only a lawfully sworn oath police officer, whether federal and state, can lawfully arrest someone in the United States, say, for example, or anywhere in their particular country. They are the ones that do the investigation. So a Supreme Court justice, a very powerful person apparently, or the President of the United States, can order all sorts of things. But if the police don't do it, if they lie, the people on the ground, or don't do their job or make up stuff, then they rule. They have the powers of arrest. They have the powers of investigation. So when you see Netanyahu and his crew for what they are, you understand the power they wield as they have their physical fingers on the physical buttons that do the physical damage. Once you understand that, and he represents weapons traders, drug money launderers, drug trafficking, casinos, that whole group, then you understand the power that he represents. Now, once you understand his relationships with Kissinger was deeply in there, and that period from 1973 to 1979, when the setup really got going for the complete infiltration of the United States. It was a Soviet-era, Soviet penetration program. It was communist. We understand communism is just another name for another Rothschild angle. He runs them all. So the communist or the Talmudic supremacist doctrine of world takeover will adopt a capitalist look. It will adopt a feral look. It will adopt a socialist look. It will adopt a full-blown communist, Stalinist, centralized control mechanism, whatever it takes, or as we see emerging now, communitarian.
Okay. All right, hold that thought. We got to go to the bottom of the hour break and pay some bills here, Brendan. We'll be back in just 3 minutes, folks. Brendan will continue with this when we get back. Stick around, more to come. All right, folks, we're back with the American Awakening, my special Friday co-host, Brendan O'Connell. And this is some of the things that go on when we're working with somebody closely around the world, folks. I just got a message from him at the break to link to another article, which I've just done. But I wanted to ask you, Brendan, regarding the Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein thing. Now, Bannon was ousted from the inner circles of the Trump administration, and he's still kind of ostracized, is he not?
Well, apparently. Let me tie in what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
I'm trying to link these sex, pedophile rings, and sex group orgies with Benjamin Netanyahu and the control mechanism and the history of Pollard and the setup under Kissinger, who was a notorious sex pedophile, back in 73 to 79. So, and that's what I'm doing in the video. I'm showing you how it links up. I believe it links up. Okay. And what that is when we talk about Epstein and pedophile rings, we have Hollywood, we have Netanyahu. Now, if you don't know, Israeli intelligence runs Hollywood via their control of drugs and prostitution rings, gay prostitutes and so on and so forth. They run the whole damn show. The pedophile rings are run by Israel. The whole damn thing. It's in the first question we should ask is, why is the mainstream media pushing the pedophile ring so hard, as is Alex Jones and others? Why? We all know the mainstream media who it works for. So they are allowing that out there. That is a threat to their network, because the network is losing heart. The network wants to get away from them. The network is falling apart. So that's why you see out there little sacrificial lambs who aren't perhaps got enough enthusiasm for the Israeli project. But when you tie it all in back to 73 to 79, you've got the mega group, which is who? Charles Bronfman and his mad brother Edgar. Okay, the mega group intimately involved with Pollard, the setup of that whole Israeli firster crowd. The same crowd that were hanging with Kissinger is the same crowd that are around Trump right now. And it's all to do with sexual perversion. It's to do with group sex. Who was around at this time with Kissinger? Well, we had his personal assistant was Paul Bremer, the man who set Iraq on fire. The man who controlled Iraq and set it on fire was Paul Bremer. He's sitting there with Kissinger. Who else was there with Kissinger and the CFR as they were setting up China at that stage? Well, that would be none other than Mr. Dr. Steve Pieczenik, the classic backroom operator.
Steve Pieczenik. Okay, I'm writing.
Dr. Steve Pieczenik.
Okay, go ahead.
Right, who's handling Alex Jones and the president, who came out, and it's on my thing, where he said, a military coup's taken place, we're in control, get used to it. Casual as you like, not a problem. He's the guy, Dr. Steve Pieczenik, for people who don't know. When Alex Jones 6 months ago or 5 months ago, when his site first went down on YouTube, he was having a heart attack, and Pieczenik goes, Alex, listen. YouTube and Google is the U.S. military, okay? Your site will be back up tomorrow. Settle down. All right, next day, back up came Alex Jones' site. All right, you must understand Pieczenik, who had a lot of people conned, including myself. He's the man who said Israel, he's said and done all the right things. Said Israel did 9/11, but they've all gone strangely quiet now. It's all pro-Israel. Every now and then, Pieczenik will toss a bone about Israel and how much he hates Bibi, but nothing ever changes. So apparently the U.S. military is in charge. You can trace it back to this same crew, Dr. Steve Pieczenik, all right? Who else was there at this stage? Well, of course, you've got the Mega Group, which is working through with, again, the BIRD, the Binational Industrial Research and Development Foundation, set up by literally the KGB operating through Israel, so that the US, under legislation and certain government organizations, would fund the high technology program for Israel and therefore Russia and China. Very nicely, thank you. This has been going on a long time. And we find Roger Stone. Who else was around under Nixon with Kissinger? Well, none other than Roger Stone, Alex Jones's sidekick. Right now, Roger Stone, the libertine, the group sex orgies, he's quite open about it. He's into group sex orgies and open marriages. He has a mistress. I talk with Robert Morrow every now and again. Robert Morrow actually wrote the book, The Clintons' War on Women, and Roger Stone put his name to it. Roger Morrow will tell you all about it. He's got his mistress there. We've got pictures of him kissing her breast with his shirt off, running off his head on ecstasy or meth or whatever in a big party. And good luck to Roger Stone. But we've got this same sex orgy group. You've got the John Boltons of the world, and God, what a horrible thought. John Bolton had an orgy with his wife sharing her around. Thanks to Jeremy Rothkirchell and Greg McCarran for that information. And then we have, of course, this same network. We've got the Bronfman family's kids in the NXIVM sex cult. The Bronfman's kids. Now, Bronfman was intimately involved in the Mega Group at the same time. And the Pollard affair. See, the Pollard affair, Jonathan Pollard's arrest in 1985, spying for Israel, but all his information he was sending on was tagged specifically. He was given specific numbered documents to get. That's from the Mega Group, the total infiltration of that military-industrial complex. That's Richard Pearl, Bill and Irving Crystal, Paul Wolfowitz, Frank Gaffney Jr., that whole little crew. They're all part of the Mega Group and these billionaire Israeli firsters, Bronfman. And now we have the NXIVM cult coming out in the news, and Bronfman's daughters are involved. And who else was involved in the NXIVM cult? Well, none other than Roger Stone, who says, I was there and, not a lot going on and I got out of it. It seemed a bit of a scam. So you've got all these links with pedophile, group sex. You can trace them back to Kissinger. All the people at that time setting up this massive spy network, this private Rothschild, Rhodes Scholar, these Israeli firster crowd, which infest the State Department, the Department of Justice, the whole thing. The Department of Justice has been infiltrated forever, totally infiltrated. This traces back to Promise Software and Bill Hamilton and Inslaw, the original software that was backdoored, allegedly by the DOJ, but that was Israel. And then Rafi Itan, the head Mossad officer, who all sat on the boards of those Kissinger set up Binational Industrial Research and Development Foundation, General Bodansky, they were all Israeli military intelligence. And they're sitting on these boards demanding the American taxpayers send their technology to Israel. And they're all working for the KGB, for crying out loud. So you've got sex cults. You've got the same crowd back in 73 to 79 setting up all these programs, including the Talpiot program, Unit 8200 graduates, the whole system. Sex cults, group sex, Kissinger, Council on Foreign Relations, Israeli Firster crowd, the Mega Group, and they're all sitting there right now with Trump, their boy Trump. It's incredible. And that's when you see Steve Bannon visiting Jeffrey Epstein, understand what else. Steve Bannon is a Hollywood producer and a scriptwriter. Okay, great. Now, what is Dr. Steve Pieczenik? He's a Hollywood producer and a scriptwriter. And Alex Jones going on about the 4 years he spent in Hollywood. How many people even know this? Jones is spilling this because he's under pressure. He's compromised. And he's under pressure, man, because they're having to spill the beans on China. And they won't go the next step, which is Israel. And why you see the ramping up of all this pedophile stuff is because Israel is saying, you better shut your mouth, you better shut your mouth. And poor Alex is sitting there right in the middle of it. He's got nowhere to go, and he keeps spilling the beans. Yes. I was in Israel. I was in Hollywood for 4 years, getting paid $10,000 a trip to go for parts. I want you to think about this, people. The place he hates so much took him 4 years to work out how much he hated it. And he says, he was in restaurants. This is from his own mouth, because I listened to him. He lets this slip because he's trying to cover his butt, because he knows this stuff's going to come out. He's worried. It's going to come out from Israel. He's compromised, clearly badly compromised. Not with young girls, I think just with prostitutes and meth and alcohol and so on.
No, let me interject here. Was this during the time he was hanging out with Charlie Sheen?
Well, that was the start. See, most people don't realize, if you're new to this, Charlie Sheen and Alex were thick as thieves for many years. Charlie Sheen, of course, major drug addict, major user of prostitutes, HIV positive, Hep C positive. And there's Alex Jones hanging out with that crowd. We see it again. Sex, Hollywood, Bronfman's, Mega Group, CFR, Steve Pachenik, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon's visiting Epstein, and so on and so forth. You can start to connect some heavy, heavy dots. And Jones is saying, I was in restaurants in Hollywood, and they were very young girls, clearly under 16, who were acting as waitresses, getting groped by these gross old men. And Jones says, I was horrified. I said, we got to get out of here. And he ran off. Never called the police. Never called the police. So you can begin to join these dots. Hollywood producers, Steve Bannon, allegedly out of the group, because what did he do? In that article I sent you, which was sent by Joseph, I think, Bannon had a falling out with Ivanka Trump over a certain issue. And lo and behold, Bannon is reported to have said, what about the 13-year-old girl that your father raped? Which is we should get Robert Morrow on. I'll contact Robert Morrow. Robert Morrow was pushing that. He says that girl is 100% for real, that 13-year-old. All right. Trump raped her anally at that party with Jeffrey Epstein. There's multiple witnesses. There would be more than enough to proceed forth. It's not like Trump goes to church every Sunday. He's a known misogynist, bigot, groping pussy, as we say, and we don't mean the tabby cat, on the record, recorded. He's clearly off his head. It's clearly off his head. 200 miles an hour, like Alex Jones gets when he says, I'm so hot. I'm so hot, when he's in his air-conditioned studio. Completely off his head on drugs.
Well, I did.
So
go ahead.
So there's that link with this sexual predatory stuff, these sex rings, this group sex. I mean, good luck if you're into group sex, want to share your wife around, as long as you're not sharing it with kids and the rest of this stuff. And I don't believe Alex Jones is into kids. I just believe he's bragged about his relationships with the Boeing engineer who designed the F/A-18, also a Hollywood producer. And he's saying, we were down with such and such, the guy who designed the Boeing F/A-18 and engineer, great guy, he's a Hollywood producer. And we're down there shooting the guns with some beautiful ladies. And hey, I got to tell you, when you've had a few beers around the beautiful women, going through a divorce. Now, why does he bring these stories up? Because he knows this stuff is going to come out. He's covering his butt. That's why. He's panicking.
It's interesting that, he got a divorce from Kelly, and he remarried, and the girl that he married, from what I understand, was a call girl. So she was basically
a hooker.
Yeah.
Well, they say that Millie Weaver and Leanne McAdoo, God bless them, with their big eyes, brown eyes. I heard the stories about that from several different sources, that was part of the reason for the divorce. Listen, we got to take a break. We'll be back. Let's touch on this Bannon article here when we get back from the break, and then we'll move on, Brendan. But I pulled up that one that you messaged me about during the break, so we'll get to that as well. Michael Herzog, The American Awakening, with my Friday co-host Brendan O'Connell. Be back in 2 minutes. More to come, folks. Stick around. All right, folks, we're back with the American Awakening. Brendan O'Connell, my Friday co-host. And I was thinking about this during the break. We had spoken briefly before the show, Brendan, last night and today. And I went in and watched that Megyn Kelly clip with Alex Jones where she interviewed him. And you're right. I mean, he danced all over the place. She asked him directly the question about Sandy Hook and whether you believe the children died or not. And I mean, he danced all over. He was sweating like a bullet. And this guy is in deep trouble here. And the crowd that he's hanging with.
You noticed that the look on his face, he was terrified.
Oh, I'm telling you, folks, you need to go in on YouTube and watch that 17-minute clip. I mean, this this guy was beside himself. It was I've never seen him look that scared.
I mean, do you seriously think Alex Jones is panicking because you've upset the Sandy Hook parents and they're going to sue you? I mean, seriously, he's in serious trouble. He should be pleased they're being sued, and he should say, Dr. Steve Pieczenik, a man who used to run false flags and brought down whole governments, who's bragging of a military coup, which he was a part of. Wouldn't Alex Jones just have said to the mainstream media, yeah, great, let's sue me. Let's go to court. Let's get this all on the record, all the discrepancies in the whole story. We'll get Dr. Steve Pieczenik on the stand, the ultimate Pentagon insider, worked at the highest levels of the Pentagon and US government, the man who marched Donald Rumsfeld out of the Pentagon at that stage. We'll get him and we'll go to town. Instead, Alex Jones is backpedaling, lying through his teeth, saying he didn't say things when he's on the record 1,000 times, having said it, mocking, laughing, and watching that man look as terrified as a rabbit, as much as it gives me a little bit of pleasure, tells me that that man is in deep, deep trouble. And sorry, all my tabs have crashed again. So obviously someone's upset.
Well, I tell you, I had a short conversation with Jim Fetzer yesterday, and yeah, he offered all of his evidence, all of his, very meticulous research done on Sandy Hook. He offered it all up to Jones to go to court with, and Jones refused it.
Whoa.
I mean,
sorry, dude. Sorry, everything is going down. Everything is crashing. All my software.
All right. Well, I wonder why. I mean, I don't think this information isn't something that they like to be put out over the airwaves. But let's get back to Bannon.
The phone's working, but the laptop's going crazy.
Well, they're listening to us, Brendan. That's why. I mean, let's face it. Through our short tenure of 5+ months now, some of that stuff that we put out over the airwaves has hit the BBC. I mean, come on. I want to take credit for something. I don't want to just think I'm doing this for nothing, nor you, for that matter. I mean, we work hard. No. Yeah, we work hard at this. We put a lot of time and effort. And by the way, I want to mention, folks, that, yes, I do have a little side business of refurbishing mobile homes, but I want to assure you that every nickel that comes in, and my producer will attest to this, every nickel that comes in this network from either advertisers or from those donors and supporters goes right back into the network, and it goes to pay my producer. I take nothing out of this. And Brennan is on the same page. He's doing this because he's a truth seeker. He wants the word out. And that's why we do this. Okay. Yes, we would love to make a few bucks. We'd love to get rich with somebody supporting us on the big time. One of those big whales, if you know.
You don't want money, do you, Mike? You don't want money. God, you got to remain poor and pure. Remember, people, they just want the money.
Yeah.
Yes, I do want money. Sorry if that offends you.
Well, no, I heard a bit of an insinuation here on a different radio broadcast here not too long ago, and I'm not going to mention any names. And it was a cryptic message talking about people go out there and they start their own networks for the money. No, we don't. We start networks so we're uninhibited about what we can say, and we don't have to argue with people about what we're going to put on, that sort of thing. Okay, so I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for the truth. But let's get back to this Steve Bannon article here with Jeffrey Epstein, because I didn't know what the connection was there. And Bannon, I know, used to be in Trump's close circle, his administration or whatever, and he was let go. Now all of a sudden he's sharing a secret meeting with this reviled billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein at the financier's notorious Upper East Side mansion. Now, he's a former White House strategist. Steve Bannon was spotted stepping out of his SUV and entering the registered sex offenders sprawling 21,000. Can you imagine, Brendan? 21,000 square foot mansion at 9 East 71st Street shortly after 7 a.m. Wednesday. I wonder how much that place is worth. Epstein's palatial pad is one of the homes where young girls were allegedly brought in to perform massages and used as sex slaves. And we assume Bannon wasn't there for a massage. Sources speculate that the disgraced Epstein wants to use his millions to work his way close to political power again. And one told us that Bannon needs money to bankroll his political agenda. And Epstein has plenty of money and craves power and success. Bannon made an early morning beeline to Epstein, even though Bannon may have burned bridges when he savaged Ivanka Trump over her criticism of Roy Moore, whom Bannon backed despite claims the candidate had sexually harassed teens, and citing an allegation in legal papers from a woman who later dropped her lawsuit that Donald Trump and Epstein had raped her when she was 13. Bannon said in response to Ivanka, and he said this to Ivanka Trump, "What about the allegations about her dad and that 13-year-old?" Epstein had previously used his millions to cultivate the world's most powerful, but has mostly given money to Democrats. And from 2001 to 2003, Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's private plane, dubbed the Lolita Express, 26 times. Epstein is close to Prince Andrew and was a regular at Trump's he was a regular at Trump's Mar-a-Lago casino. Can you believe it, Brendan?
Yeah, good old Sheldon Adelson, the mega group, Bronfman, sex cults. It's all tied in.
Unbelievable. You want to comment any further on this before we move on?
Assuming the article is correct, Bannon's a major insider. And is he out of the Trump group? I don't know. It's certainly weird. The whole setup is weird. Who's who, who's not who's who in the zoo, who's with them, who's against them. I have no idea. But I just remember Rex Tillerson. Tillerson has his problems, but I think he's basically a fairly proud American sort of a thing. And lo and behold, when he was sacked as Secretary of State, I remember that. I'll never forget that press conference where he said, "Please remember the Constitution, stay at your posts. Thank you," and walked off. Now, it was chilling. It was chilling. So now we're starting to see these mainstream articles. I absolutely have no doubt it's connected with my work the last 10 years, high-profile case, the Israeli state coming out against me, my high-profile trial, which people might want to look up so they understand where I'm coming from, and the idiots online criticising. The work with you, things really changed when I started working with you, and then I got on Rents and pushed that material forward. And thank you to Andrea, who just sent me some information. The point is, this stuff is starting to break out. We had the Telpiot crew there happening with lots of links, lots of stuff on China coming out and the relationship with Israel. Lots of stuff is pouring out now, and it's getting out there. It's seeping out there. And we're going to see some major egg on a lot of people's faces. They've got a lot of explaining to do, and we're going to see some, God's sake, sorry. Things are just crashing everywhere. They're crashing my Proton Mail account constantly. We're going to see this leak out. It's only a matter of time. It could be weeks. But something is going to give, because the taxpayers are finding out. Mattis bringing up the Pentagon audit, which was a huge thing, which people are not following up. It's not going to happen if people don't follow it up. Catherine Austin Fitts, and also who else? Cynthia McKinney came out, and a bunch of people, and Rand Paul came out, and his father, and just laughed and said, "Oh, nothing's going to happen." Well, as long as you've got that attitude, nothing will happen. But that's got to be followed up by people, because this has links in with Promise. And who's doing the Pentagon audit? My God, I couldn't believe it. Cheyenne sent me it. It's MITRE Corp. It's MITRE. Oh, my God. MITRE was intimately involved in 9/11, for crying out loud. It's a Middle East-based Saudi company filled with Jews.
I was going to say there has to be some kind of Israeli connection to it. Well, wait a minute.
God, yes.
Yeah, that was involved in 9/11. The MITRE
heavily.
Yeah.
P-Tech.
Okay. P-Tech. Yeah.
They were running the FAA. They were doing audits on the FAA. They had access to all the computer systems.
Oh my God. Okay.
And they're doing the Pentagon audit. Oh my God.
Like anything's going to come of that, huh? That's like the fox guarding the chicken coop, Yeah. Anyway, okay, we're getting close to the top of the hour break now. You had messaged me during the last break and asked me to pull up what happened with a high court case. Now, which court case are we speaking of here?
No, it's not a high court case. I wrote this synopsis. It was for a high court appeal. And while I was in jail with my broken arm, I wrote this background to the case so it could be handed as a brief to a high court appeals barrister or his solicitor, his instructing solicitor, and they would have the whole thing laid out. I did this in jail with a badly broken arm for the first 2 weeks. It took me months being harassed by guards. But during this time, as they were reading it, because security was calling me into the security office of the prison, Albany Maximum Security Prison. Actually, it's not a bad prison down there in Albany on the south coast of Western Australia, maximum security, but really nice stuff. I was being pulled into security saying, "How are you getting all this information?" I said, "This is all my legal paperwork that my lawyer at the time, Neil Russell Taylor,
the man who told me to relax and I'd be looked after, he was just back from China at the time, that's another story, had given me all my material, thank the Lord, and I was able to just hand copy in one finger typing with a badly broken arm, this material. And at that time, it was rumoured via little birdies later that Alan Gingle, I think his name is, Alan Gingle, the head of the Office of National Assessments, Andrew Wilkie, who's quite a famous personality, now an MP in Tasmania. Andrew Wilkie worked for the Office of National Assessments. He was a whistleblower. Well, his boss, the rumour was let go because of my case and the fact that he had not informed the Prime Minister of the dangers of letting Israel into the country. That's Gingle, the head of the Office of National Assessments. And I've got all that in my High Court synopsis. So we never got to the High Court, and there's going to be a link under this story that you can go to and you can read what happened with recordings to my lawyer's office, because we got funding for it. $10,000 was put in and they shafted me. And it's all on record in their emails and recorded calls, and they didn't even care.
All right, hold on. Hold that thought. We got to go to the top of the hour break, and we'll get back to that when we get back from the break. No, you'd sent me an email saying what happened to the High Court case, but I was looking over the synopsis before the show. 235 pages, typing with one finger. Had to take a long time. We'll be back, folks. Stick around. Second hour coming up. All right, folks, we're back. Second hour of the American Awakening with Brendan O'Connell, my Friday co-host. A quick shout out to those listeners in Delta, Utah, Crestview, Florida, and also Great Bend, Kansas. I haven't mentioned you, but don't think that I don't remember that you're there, folks. We've just changed around the commercial break thing, and I know you're out there. I know you're listening, and I appreciate that. Now, before we jump into some snippets, what I'd like to do, Brendan, is get into a little kind of an overview of this synopsis. But what I'd really like to do with it is go through it piece by piece, take some copious notes, which I wasn't able to do on the short notice that I got with this, and do a complete breakdown of it maybe on the next show. In the meantime, before we get into that, there's another article that you had sent me about Qatar's emir heads to Turkey for talks with Erdogan. You want to, give us an overview of that one? What's that all about?
No, nothing about it. Sorry, I'm just totally distracted. They're just crashing. Everything is crashing now. Everything. The moment I tell you what's this High Court synopsis, people don't understand. This High Court synopsis is gold. It's absolute gold. Absolute, no one reads it. When Hamid Fararoli, the senior international correspondent for Press TV, I met him at the Gaza rally in 2014 in Sydney, Australia, and I got it to him. His jaw dropped. His family are high-profile lawyers in Sydney. He's got an engineering degree, and I think he's still based in Berlin as their senior international correspondent. His jaw dropped, and he said, "Man, you're one man against the world," meaning not Assange, you. And there was meant to be a big 20-minute show done like they did with Gwyneth Todd. And he said, that's withholding my funding. They're not giving me any money, Brendan. They're a bunch of retards. They're corrupt, nepotism. They're probably embezzling the money. This is what was coming out of the mouth of Hamid Fararoli to me about Press TV. So understand, people, it is absolute gold. And every time I go to open it, they're crashing in the tabs. And then now they're crashing the whole Firefox continuously. We'll see how long this lasts. But they don't want any intelligent debate on hate speech legislation, who's pushing it, and how you get around it. It's very simple to get around any of this legislation. People are all, oh my God, I can't say anything. No. I can give you exactly how you get around it, how to behave, public interest, and intent. Once you understand that, it all becomes very simple. And I've had pages torn down from my blog. I've had the YouTube videos I've made taken down as community guideline strikes when they've left everything else up, but just the stuff on hate speech legislation, which is just very simple stuff. And I'm just going, what the hell is going on? So I urge people to please take the time, and your producer will put the links under the story to read. It's got an index. You can skim over the index in 30 seconds. I went to great lengths to put the detailed index. I then put a timeline in. It's in two parts. There's an index PDF, which is separate from the main body. And then the main body's got the timeline. And you can get into the meat and potatoes of the biggest hate speech high-profile trial on the planet ever, the one that brought in the Israeli ambassador, the Israeli deputy foreign minister, the Australian foreign minister, and over 100 local and federal members of parliament in a huge criminal contempt of court international incident. If I can't get your attention with that, the only person ever on the planet to be named by the Israeli foreign state as the reason for a Friends of Israel rally, all right, I'm a guy sleeping on couches, one guy with a gaggle of half insane lunatics around him. Half of them are neo-Nazis. The other half are just crazy people who think white angels are protecting them. They're driving around without driver's licenses and license plates. I mean, it was just madness. And yet the Israeli state had to come out and attempt to intimidate the local state judiciary, legal system and police, because Inspector Barry Shelton, the head of state counterterrorism, had emailed me 6 weeks before, Brendan, we all respect your work, when I had a huge fight with his underlings, the state security group. We nearly came to blows. In fact, we were pretty close to blows. So when you understand the background and take the time, you'll see the case is huge, and you won't even find it mentioned. None of the Jewish Board of Deputies in Australia, none of them will mention this case. It's not even on the record. They didn't even put the case in the OSLE freely available website for appeals. I had to write to them and demand, where the hell is my case, so I can research it to quote it for my appeal. It wasn't even up. So when you understand how big this case was and what I got on the record and what I didn't get on the record, I had Rabbi David Freilich on the stand, an Orthodox rabbi. Let me set this out for people. Never in history has a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi in standing, been on the stand and cross-examined. You know where it happened? It happened at my trial, and no one gives a damn. Rabbi David Freilich was live from Jerusalem via video link. You'd think someone from the revisionist movement might want to do an analysis, don't you? Don't you? Now, I didn't do it. Oh, there we go. Crashed again. Okay. It's non-stop. Anyway, it's okay. And also I had Professor of Jewish Civilization Studies, Andrew Marcus. Pretty big things. Some very interesting things were said. I didn't do it well, but they totally rattled me. They wouldn't let me present my evidence, which was to do with intent and state of mind. And my lawyer agreed. I sacked my lawyer in the end. He wouldn't present the evidence. He thanked me. He was so relieved. John Bowger, he wanted out of there. And the prosecutor, I had a wine with the prosecutor 4 years later, Anthony Ayres, the prosecutor. He said, you're exactly right. They should never have been on the legislation. That's a quote. And he said, I've never seen a lawyer run out of a courtroom so fast. That's another quote from the prosecutor. Everyone agreed with me privately. Everybody, even the chief judge at the time, Peter Martino, was very nice. And they were all like, God, they were freaking out. I got all this material on the record and nobody gives a damn. It's incredible. So I urge people, please, when your producer puts the links under, go and read that synopsis. It will give you the complete laying out of all of this hate speech legislation, racial vilification legislation, and the key words and the key ways they try to entrap you in it, which is why I've found time and again things crash and strange things happen when I mention this case. Right? Now, Iran didn't want a bar of it, invite me over. They're telling, oh, yes, it's all on. And they delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed for 2 long years. 2 long years, to the point where Hamid Fararoli is having a fit. My first trip to Iran, I'm sitting in the smog in Tehran, and the first trip I made, I lasted 2 weeks, and Hamid Fararoli says, Brendan, what were you expecting? It's a third world country. They're not giving me any money. They're embezzling the funds. It's full of corruption and nepotism. You may as well go. That's why I left. All right. Now, Hamid Fararoli is a damn good guy. He's probably not liking me saying this publicly. But what am I meant to do when people ask, well, what happened? Why did you leave after you got there and you said Mr. Javed from the Foreign Office gave you verbally political asylum and you left? So I have to tell people, Hamid, this is how ridiculous Iran is. They are incompetent, utterly incompetent. The left hand doesn't know what the damn right hand's doing. It's full of corruption and nepotism. No one wants to talk about that. Dr. Kevin Barrett doesn't want to talk about that. They want to rag on Saudi and the Gulf states, and Iran is this little angel of light. They're full of corrupt Swiss bank account holding Rafsanjani rats. The IRGC are making millions of dollars out of the arms trade. They're working with Israel, and I'm damn well sick of it. And if people would read that hate speech legislation, get the overview and see that I typed that in 2012, and before that, from material posted in 2009 and 2011 in a major case. You will go, holy hell. Holy hell. Nobody reads it.
Well, I'm going to read it. I skimmed over it. It's 235 pages long, and I have to say, folks, from what I've been able to skim, and I've got through about half of it, It's meticulously done by virtue of the fact that you were in a jail cell with a broken arm and typing this on one finger. My God, Brendan, how long it took you to do this. But the format and the way it's laid out, you know, it reminded me of when I was skimming through it. It reminded me of Christopher Bolin's book, because he laid out the whole thing regarding 9/11, who did it, times, dates, and places, and all that stuff. And this is like, have you got a photographic memory or something? I mean, this is unbelievable.
Well, it took me 3 to 4 months. I had 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. Half the time it was never allowed, and they closed the education department. I had guards over my shoulder. You finished it? You finished it? It was meant to be a brief letter, and it turned into what it is. For the first 2 weeks, I had a badly, not just broken, a displaced fracture. The whole thing was shattered. They refused me x-rays. That's a whole other story, what they did with that. Eventually, I got a cast on it. It should have been operated on, an open reduction internal fixation, or ORIF, which is, you know, I've worked orthopedics. There's a whole other corruption story there in that, and how they covered it up. And I'm there tapping with my left finger with my arm up against my body for 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks. Eventually, I got a cast, and I could just manage to tap, an above elbow cast, just managed to tap with 2 fingers. And I hand typed out the vast majority of that, nearly all of it. And they were calling me into the security office. How are you getting all this information? I said, well, here's my paperwork. It's all legal. This is from my legal stuff I used at my trial, and or didn't get to use, but had at my trial. And there's a thing called Kiwix, which is like Wikipedia on a hard drive they've got in the jail. And of course, I was looking up Kiwix, which is on the hard drive, and perfectly normal. And there was mountains of information on there about the subject, would you believe? And I'm copying and pasting this in. Well, they banned Kiwix now. I mean, these people, instead of just letting prisoners get on with it and produce material, they do everything they can to stop prisoners doing that. I'll tell you, that's another story, what I experienced in the jail system. And we have a good jail system in Australia, let alone the US or other places. All right? And if this is what they do to you in a good system, what are they doing to you in the United States? God.
Well, I've had Rudy Davis on my program, he does ministries for prisoners all over the country, and some of the horror stories that he has told me off the air, as well as on the air. Do you know who Rudy? Who Rudy Davis?
No, but the priests are great. The priests know, and they're not happy. I've got to know quite a few, man, and they said it's disgusting what's going on. That's so angry.
Well, I mean, Tom Lockver is a prime example. He spent a year in jail. He gained 100 pounds. You know, I mean, because of the food that they feed you, at least in these prisons over here, they deliberately fill it full of starch, and you have no choice but to eat it. That's all they offer you. And you know, from the time he went in to the time he got out, he gained over 100 pounds. I mean, he was pretty heavy when I met him. But at any rate, now back to this hate crimes legislation again. Now we know that they tricked the Australians into giving up their guns. They killed the real Crocodile Dundee over this, I believe. But the hate crimes legislation, has this been a form of hate crimes legislation been enacted in Australia, and that's what's currently there under legislation now, and they're trying to bring. Well, I don't, enlighten me.
No, I'm not. I'm laughing. They just crashed the tab in front of me as you were talking.
Well, you know what? What they say is, you know you're over the target when you're getting flack. Okay.
Well, that's all right. I keep it up because I'm recording the whole thing. I've got my camera here and my phone. Keep it up, boys and girls. I mean, they just keep doing this like idiots, giving them material. They're just like children. They've got to do something. They can't just sit back. Anyway, carry on. Sorry.
No, I was, this hate crimes legislation and what happened to you over there. I mean, we've seen little snippets, North Carolina, I believe, maybe little places in the Northwest, where they're trying to enact this hate crimes legislation. And this is all directed by these underlings of Jacob Rothschild. Okay. In other words, they just want to shut us up. They want, they want to get rid of the First Amendment, get rid of the Second Amendment, basically just trash the Constitution and have us walking around on pharmaceuticals like zombies and not saying. They might as well just sew a zipper on our lip, for crying out loud. I mean, what happened to you? And folks, the reason we keep bringing this up, and especially for the new listeners, is because it's going to happen to us if we do not sit down, read this stuff, take a stand, get active, and do something about it. Okay.
Well, that's Alex Jones's job. Alex Jones's job is to be. Listen, he was inciting to the point he should have been arrested and charged for incitement. The stuff that came out of his mouth was disgusting, and he was deliberately insightful. And that's another one of his little jobs, is to keep this stuff going on. Then he pleads, "Oh, I'm a victim. But when you understand the legislation is really easy to get around. So, do your intro, bro, and let's hoe into it. Let's tell people.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we're gonna have to come up on quarter of the hour break, but there's a couple of snippets I want to get into regarding this here because it's there, folks. It's just it's a treasure trove of information here. I'm frankly I'm amazed that you were able to do this as meticulously as you were, and I don't mean to blow your head up, Brendan, but I'll give credit where credit is due. But anyway, we got to go to a break, quarter of the hour break. We'll be back here in 2 minutes. I'll jump into just a few of these snippets, but we're going to do a whole nother show on this probably next week or the week after. So we'll be back in 2. Michael Herzog, The American Awakening, with my co-host Brendan O'Connell. Be back in 2. All right, folks, we're back with The American Awakening. Brendan O'Connell, my co-host on Friday. Now, I'm going to just read a snippet here. Folks, this is huge, and it goes into a lot of different areas. The spying on Americans. We know we've got this great big place in Utah that stores all of the information, metadata, telephone calls, everything that everybody's doing. They want tabs on everybody. And as I scrolled through this, there's a couple of things that caught my eye. The Israeli intelligence agencies spying on Americans. Now, I'm going to read an excerpt, and I want you to comment on this, Brendan. This is by Phil Giraldi. There was a question that was posed to Phil Giraldi. What would remain of the United States citizens' privacy? And he says, well, very little. This has been ongoing ever since 2001, and some might argue even before that. And what is happening is that these agencies at the state and local level are collecting huge amounts of information on every citizen. There are state agencies that are homeland security agencies that collect information independently. This even happens at the county level in the United States, where information about people and what they do and what their activities are collected. They're collecting all of this data, and they're storing it. All right? And if they succeed in putting the kind of legislation in that they put in Australia, we are all in deep trouble. You want to comment on that, Brendan?
Well, actually, I disagree. They're not in deep trouble because it's really easy to get around. And in fact, you could argue that it's great because it'll get rid of the idiots. The idiots won't be allowed online. They could be easily prosecuted and tossed in jail. And you might think, well, that's a good thing. You'll get rid of the idiots and you can have an adult discussion about very important subjects. The trouble is, the legislation, even though it states specifically in the critique of the legislation called So Far So Good, which was, remember, Australia is one of the few places, particularly Western Australia, with racial vilification or hate speech legislation, incitement and racial harassment, specifically the criminal code, not just a federal Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission civil code, it's criminal code. And so Western Australia became a very interesting place to test it. Now, you can actually argue that it's a good thing, but however, we know the intent of the people who framed this legislation. As the Attorney General of Western Australia, Peter Foss, in the 2004 debate over the legislation, he actually says that an interesting point is, and it's in the synopsis, the quote, he says the interesting point is the man who is lobbying hardest for the legislation, Mr. Euron Dror, he is the writer of the Maccabean, which is a hardcore Zionist Jewish paper, which I had multiple copies of, and they are hardcore Zionists. And Peter Foss says it was very interesting that he was lobbying the hardest for the legislation, and he said the irony was, after looking through his magazine, he'd be one of the first to be prosecuted under it. Imagine that. That's the Attorney General saying, well, ironically, the person lobbying for it would be the first to be prosecuted. Because he says what they want to do to the Palestinians is not nice, but he says I don't think it adds too much good order to the state. However, if we ban that sort of material, we'll have even, quote, bigger problems. I wonder what those bigger problems are.
Oh God, it's anybody's guess. Well, as I scroll down through this, we're looking at all of this software, the backdoors and all the computers and the listening agencies and the metadata that's being collected, and it's all being stored, and it's being stored for a purpose. It's being stored to be used later, okay? And it's for an AI supercomputer brain. That's what it's for. All this talk about terrorism and watching us, that's secondary. The main reason is the excuse is they want to gather all the data of the world, all the books, all the comments, all the thoughts, the feelings, Facebook data, Google data, every single bit of data, and they're stockpiling it to use in an AI supercomputer, which is the Antichrist, the rebuilding of the Third Temple. Adam Green did an excellent video on that, the rebuilding of the Third Temple and artificial intelligence. The rabbis are intimately involved. They're demanding Trump assist in the rebuilding of the Third Temple, and they're going to stick an AI supercomputer, quantum supercomputer in there, and it will have all the knowledge of the world stuck into it. That's the role of these setups. Well, it's for the ultimate control. I mean, if they have a supercomputer, a quantum computer that's got all the knowledge, all the everything, blah, 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 how does that fit in with the one world totalitarian new world order government? I mean, it has
implications. Its implications obviously are major, but it's not the real reason. They want to create a god. This is their god. All right. This is what they believe. You've got to understand Jewish tradition in terms of the Talmud and Zohar, Jewish mysticism. Their view there is that God, number one, the universe is a quantum supercomputer. It's made up of zeros and ones. Things are blinking in and out of existence at huge rates, just like a computer, 0 and 1, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, at rates that are unimaginable. And that's what creates the known universe as we experience it via our senses, our five senses. And this is not just obviously quote unquote Jews into this philosophy. There's this Hindu parts of it, Brahmic, all sorts of different philosophies and cultures talk about this, multiple universes, time travel, wormholes. And what they're saying is you can manipulate it, but God is an amoral force. It's like the Force in Star Wars. It's not a super personal personality. It's not a father in the clouds with a grey beard. It's an amoral force. And what they believe in Talmud and Jewish racial and religious supremacism is that, quote unquote, Jews are the physical manifestation of the Godhead. So as this amoral energy, this amoral stuff comes down, the quote unquote Jews, their rabbinic elite, will interpret God's will. And they will put it down in books, whether it's Talmud or Zohar or the Shulchan Aruch, which most people don't talk about. The Russian state wanted to ban it as hate literature. The Shulchan Aruch is very important. We don't talk about that enough. And then they will be the interpreters. That's why you get endless legislation. This ties in with the Uniform Commercial Code or Admiralty Law, and so on and so forth. So they say the Jew is the physical manifestation of the law and order on the earth, raising us up from animals, which are impulsive, into thinking human beings. And they believe they are the embodiment of that, and they want to create a god on earth. They're creating these robots, which are golem. I coined this term. They're golem robots, which is the golem. Where do you think J.R. Tolkien, who was a hardcore traditional Catholic, when he wrote Lord of the Rings, he was hardcore traditional Catholic. When he wrote Lord of the Rings, he knew who he was talking about when he brought up Gollum. Most people don't realize Gollum is a term for a creation of the rabbis. The rabbis in the Talmud create a golem out of thin air via magic to help them destroy the Gentiles. Now, these robots that they're bringing in are the golem. And this is how it's all tying in with, again, go and watch Adam Green's video on his No More News channel. It's on Joseph Davies' website. I'll send you the links. And you can see their own quotes. The capital, Ben Gurion said, the first prime minister of Israel, the capital will be in Jerusalem. We need to tie this in, which is what I hope to do with the video, into the high technology sector, the gathering of data. Israel is a technology juggernaut, medical nanotechnology, agricultural technology, how they got there, and the ultimate is the rebuilding of the third temple and the placing there of a quantum supercomputer. And when you understand artificial intelligence, Ray Kurzweil, this crazy humanist movement that's growing up around it, you will understand what they're up to. And when they input those algorithms, they can predict the future. Watch the movie Pi, P-I, not the one with the kid in the boat with the tiger, but Pi. It was the forerunner. It was, I've forgotten the name of the director, but the forerunner to the Matrix. Before the Matrix and the Wachowski brothers, they're giving you the secrets in the Matrix, what they believe. Well, before that was Pi, P-I. And I urge you to watch it. It's filmed in black and white. It's excellent. And it will give you the rundown of the rabbis, because there's a secret number to God, and this guy has a mystical experience, and the rabbis are telling him he's also a computer programmer. He's trying to predict the future. This is like 1994, this movie, 98, 96. And he's trying to predict the future. And the rabbis tell him, you're bearing a message from our God. All right, go and watch the movie P.I., Pi. You'll love it, and you'll understand the third temple and why they're storing all this data in real time. It's not about terrorism primarily. It's about a quantum supercomputer. And they're doing it. They're going to link it in with smart cities, the Internet of Things, the robots, the backdoors. They're completely freaking insane. They really are completely insane, out of control, sociopathic morons. And it's time for Mattis, it's time for the US military to stand up, because you're the only people who can do it, to start landing the Marines on the beaches of Tel Aviv. You need to invade Israel, and I am not joking. You need to physically invade Israel and dismantle it. now.
Wow. Well, as I continue with this, I mean, this is so all-encompassing. It's mind-blowing. And, more times than not, when I have you on Fridays, Brendan, my brain at the end of the show feels like a dish rag being, wrung out. But, as I scrolled through this, there's a couple of things that jumped out at me, and I want you to comment on this one. Now, we got to go to break here in a couple of minutes. But I was reading here, and I know a little about this particular topic because I know Larry Silverstein and Mark Lowy was one of them. But in the following pages, you will see the state of Israel's use of the Sayanim, or the helper. And these are Jews who are prepared to assist Israeli intelligence in all sorts of ways. That includes access to databases that they don't already have access to. And remember, they already have access to a huge amount of databases of all kinds, and they have backdoors in the hardware and the software. And they have the most advanced computer chip fabrication plant in the world, in Israel, in Intel. And I'm sure Israeli intelligence have the run of the place. And this plant produces chips for internet routers, laptops, desktops, tablets, and mobile smartphones, with people putting their entire lives online on Facebook and Google, putting every bit of information every bit of information possible on mobile devices like tablets and smartphones, which are always connected to mobile internet. So you can imagine the intelligence that access to that sort of data can generate. And this is exactly what Israel specializes in. And just like the American Jew Henry Kissinger shipped American industry to China, we now find American high-tech and Silicon Valley being shipped to Israel. Now, we're going to go to a break here shortly, but I want you to comment on the Sayanim because I know that subject, that terminology came in front of me just a couple of years after 9/11 because they had certain key players in key places. And Brendan, this isn't just Israel. I mean, these people are here. They're dual citizens. They're embedded in our government. They're embedded in our industry, and they're everywhere. And I can only assume that a lot, if not most, or maybe all of them are Sayanims. Would you agree with that?
Oh, to a very large degree. It depends on the person. But anyone running backwards and forwards to Israel with close family in Israel is a risk. You've got all these Zionist youth groups like Habanim Dror, right? They have weapons training. They salute the Israeli flag. They sing the Israeli national anthem. These are American kids, Jewish kids in Habanim Dror. It's an indoctrination, Hitler Youth, young Komsomol, the equivalent in Soviet times. That's what it is. Okay. Even Sacha Baron Cohen went through it. And who was the head of it in Western Australia? Well, none other than Stanley Elliott Keyser, the 21-year-old who claims to be a child virtually. Everyone says, you attack that kid? No, he's 21 years old and the head of Habanim Dror and the Australasian Union of Jewish Students and a hardcore activist.
All right, hold the thought. Hold the thought. We got to take a break. Let's get back to him when we get back from the break. This is a bottom of the hour break. It'll be 3 minutes, folks. We'll be right back and more on Keyser when we get back. Stick around, more to come. All right, folks, we're back with Brendan O'Connell, my Friday co-host. Sorry for that interruption, Brendan. We have to pay the bills here. But we're talking about Keyser. Elliot, is it Elliott Keyser? Go ahead, continue. Is Brendan on the mute button?
I was going to blame the Jews again. They've crashed my computer completely. I've lost my internet connection for the computer. So it's something in the laptop because I'm not touching the phone. I'm on the same 4G network. Well, I set a different phone, but on the 4G network in Malaysia, Maxis. And they've crashed my computer. They've crashed my security software. They've crashed. Everything's gone. Nothing is connecting. Now, that's okay. It's not a disaster because we're still talking, but I want to give people an indication of just when you understand how secure my laptop is for a Windows 10 Pro machine and what they can do to you, which I'm recording, I might add. I don't know what their game is, but I will tell you one little story, and I keep saying I haven't told people the half of it. When I was in my windowless hotel room initially coming back from Iran, they were obviously listening in real time. At one stage, they had a female police officer of the Royal Malaysian Police sitting outside on the couch. It was not intimidating. It was just keeping an eye on things. They were probably wondering what the hell's going on, listening to me speak and emails and things. And I said, what we need is a military coup. There needs to be a coup and Ahmadinejad back in Iran. If Iran is going to be the last bastion against Israel, it better start doing it. So maybe they need to get rid of Rouhani and have a coup. And I was talking about this. Suddenly the internet cuts off and it's on, off, ding, 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 like this. Unheard of, never happens. And I went, what the hell? And I thought to myself, I wonder if this the Intel boy is having a go. So I typed on my WhatsApp to someone, sorry, we've lost the connection. I think I might have upset Malaysia. I pressed send. Within 5 seconds, it stopped. I called for a coup again. They did it again. On, off, on, off. I texted back. I think I've definitely upset them now. It stopped. I could give you 100 stories like that. They watch people in real time and people mock me for it. I say, for crying out loud, you've just heard Snowden give you the details on Assange, all right? They do it to you. But the fact is my laptop is very secure, as secure as you can, but you can't get past the Intel management engine and all those hardware backdoors they've got. But anyway, if they don't want me talking about this, why not just put 2.8 million in my account and we're done? I don't know what the games are for. It could be just some idiot somewhere writing their scripts. Maybe they've got an operation to see who can hack me as part of a bet for lunchtime or something down at the NSA. I have no idea. But they don't stop me. They annoy me, but they don't stop me. And they just give me material. And look, it's pretty hard to maintain my track and my train of thought when I'm constantly trying to keep this stupid thing up. Tabs are crashing. The whole Firefox crashes. Now I've lost my connection. I was trying to get a quote from Paul Lyson. I'm sorry, dude. Yeah, sorry, I'm losing the plot. I'm just freaking.
No, that's okay. I guess my only question is, do you think it has something to do with this current broadcast?
Yes, but it's not what you think it is. It's to do with this hate speech legislation. They've done it continuously. They don't like it being talked about. They freaking hate it. And I don't even see it as that big a deal, but they do. They do it every time. Every single time. They go crazy when we talk about this hate speech legislation. And this case is huge. It's the number one hate speech case. And forget Tobin. Tobin's case was nothing. The Israeli state came out against me for crying out loud. They were in a panic, an absolute panic. And the legislation, my critique of this legislation is phenomenal. I urge you to read it. The quotes in there are classics. Peter Myers is supposed to be having a look at it, and he said, I'm busy. It's like, well, to hell with you, man. I'm not, I was nice about it, but it's like, I'm not going to beg you. If you don't want to do an academic study, I'm busy. Yeah, we're all busy. But trust me, we won. We won the directions hearing. We won. Jews are not a racial group under the definition. With John Bowger as a lawyer, he did an excellent job at a directions hearing under Judge McCann, and Judge McCann said, hint, and I'll give you the quote, because we were going to say, there are no common secular markers that make Jews an ethnic group or race. Right? You must have secular markers. They don't even have a common geographical location. So what are the common secular markers that links a Jew in Yemen with a Jew in Russia and a Jew in Ethiopia? The answer to that question, there is no link other than a religious belief and the attendant practices surrounding that belief. And of course, they've raised the ancient Hebrew. But if I raise the ancient Latin Mass, does that make Catholics? Because under their definition, Catholics are a race or ethnicity. Bikies are a race or ethnicity, right? Because they have removed things like common geographical origin. They've removed that from the central tenet of what an ethnicity is in the legislation. So if you actually read this stuff, anyone who wants to take them to court on this will win, 100%. It blows hate speech legislation out the door. If people will actually read and analyse, get onto these revisionist movement slackers who won't even mention this case. Germa Rudolph got in touch with me when the High Court and said he'd do a sworn affidavit because there were matter raised about the Holocaust. I never raised the Holocaust, they did. And he said, well, that gives you an opening, Germa, and that whole revisionist movement to get in on this and write a sworn affidavit. He said, yes, I'm very interested. A week later, there was 5 Bitcoin put in an account. 5 days after that, Ernst Zundel dies of a heart attack. Just after that, it was 3 months later, his wife dies. A whole heap of things happened. And again, it's all on my blog, and you'll put the links in under there. What happened with the High Court case? I've got recordings of the lawyers who were supposed to come on board, how enthusiastic they were. The instructing solicitor was scared. He says, I'm scared, Brendan. This is instructing solicitor, Kevin Foley, very well known, high-quality instructing solicitors, worked on very high-profile cases, saying, I'm scared. He says it 6 times. I'm scared of Israel, Brendan. I'm scared they're going to attack me, hurt me, damage my business premises. So, it's all there. And given the amount, this is the worst it's been for a long time. What do you want me to tell you? I'm trying. If I have to beg people to look at this, if I have to beg the revisionist movement to do a report, there's something very wrong.
No. Well, look. When the program's over, I'm going to have my producer post this on the website. Now, as I said, this is 235 pages, and as I peruse through this, It is done as meticulous, if not even more so, than Christopher Bolin's book, which, by the way, I'm going to share with you folks Monday and Tuesday of next week. A very, very well-written book. He repeats himself a couple times at a couple places, but that's okay. Brendan spells this whole thing out, and I promise you, Brendan, I will get to this over the weekend. I'm going to go in and take some copious notes on this for high points of it and bring it back up and elaborate on this, because this is key. It's extremely important to do. But again, this synopsis, it's a longer synopsis.
In my hand, in Tehran, where it is illegal to drink. It is illegal. And he screamed. He screamed, "No freedom!" You can't make it up. I was looking for the hidden camera, thinking, is this a test? Is this... And in the end, I just did the sign. I did the sign of the cross and said, "I do this for international relations."
Oh my God.
Catholic style. And I drank that 4 cup. I thought, this is what is going to go on. And all I heard was from this group was, I love the Shah and I hate the Ayatollahs and I want to be a part of the West. That's all I heard the whole time.
Hold that thought. We got to go to the last break here. I mean, we got a little bit off topic today, folks. That's okay. It's Friday. Brendan's here. I mean, you get to know Brendan's personality, and he's a heck of a guy. A little bit sarcastic at times, and I get it behind the scenes, but heck of a guy. We'll be back. Final segment coming up. Michael Herzog, The American Awakening. Be right back. All right, folks, we're back. Final segment of The American Awakening with Brendan O'Connell, my Friday co-host. Well, I guess when we got off topic from the Cyanims, you probably don't even want to go into any of these other guys like Larry Page or Mark Zuckerberg or any of these people, huh? Is he still muting his mic?
Sorry, I was powdering my nose. Let's get into intent. Let's wind this up with the key to hate speech legislation. I'll tell you all the secrets. You ready?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready. Go ahead.
All right. Here's what's amazing. No one has told anybody that all hate speech legislation is built around this term, intent and public interest. What that means is this: you can't say, this is the truth, therefore I want to say it. No, the truth is not illegal. That's correct. And a knife is not illegal either. Having a knife on your possession is not illegal. So what makes someone walking through the streets with a knife get arrested for being armed in public? Well, here's what it is. It's the context and intent. So the knife is not illegal and neither is the truth. But what's your intent with the truth or the knife? That's the point. So have you got a criminal history? Are you armed in public, or are you a chef going to your job? So you see, the query is not the knife. That's not the issue. Truth is not the issue. The knife is not the issue. It's your intent, what you're going to do with that truth. So if you are screaming, and they say constantly throughout the critique of the legislation, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So if you're screaming, and they said the point of the legislation, and this is the cream of the critique of the legislation from Australia, because it's one of the few places with this specifically in legislation in criminal law, and also in the HEROC, the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission, which is like civil law, suing through the states, like defamation, but through the state. The state will pay for it. So it's all about intent. So if your background is you're a member of a neo-Nazi movement or a white nationalist movement, if you're privately saying things, because it's not private, they produce private dossiers for the judge, okay, and you're clearly, quote unquote, a racist, then they are going to say your intent with the truth is not to inform the public in the interests of public interest. Your intent is to make people hate Jews. You have an irrational hatred of Jewish people because all of the vilification legislation, hate speech legislation, is built directly. In fact, the International Court of Human Rights is based on how Jews were isolated in National Socialist Germany. They were isolated out of university. They were isolated out of jobs. They were isolated out of all sorts of areas. And then, according to the narrative, they were all gassed en masse, men, women, and children. And that is the whole purpose of this legislation. That is what it is built upon. It's nothing to do with other ethnic groups. They just happen to be there to make it look good. It's all about Jews and Jewish power. It's all about the ADL. And limiting. Their intent is to limit discussion on this very important issue, to make sure it remains a subculture, to make sure it's isolated and out of the public domain. That's the role. But when you understand that if we just get tidy, present ourselves, don't rant, don't say things like I said, which the police told me was the ultimate tipping point for proceeding with the prosecution against me, was when I said the words, "Your days are numbered." And of course, they use that in in the media, and I'll put this together in a video, and in the media, they cut that off. But what I say is your days are numbered as long as you continue to adhere to rabbinic Pharisaic Judaism and the Talmud, meaning when people find out what's in there, you're in deep trouble. Now, I expected to be able to present material in the court to the jury to explain what I meant by that, my state of mind and my intent. They just refused to let me to have it. They wouldn't let me put anything on the record. So if you can understand that you can make this legislation work simply by, one, being non-emotional, not like an Alex Jones or like me getting angry or ranting. Number two, being like a Dr. Kevin McDonald, and another criticism of the legislation is the lawyer critiquing it. It's called So Far So Good. That's the name of the critique of the legislation. He says the problem with this concept of it's not what you say, it's how you say it, is that someone could present an academic argument as to why you should gas all the Jews. And you could present that in an academic fashion. And that's how Professor Kevin McDonald got away with a lot of stuff for a long time before they finally pinged him. In his books, he was presenting academic research discussion in the public interest as a professor. That's why he got away with it for a long time. But unfortunately, eventually they got him. And let's face it, he does have a certain bent in his who he hangs out with and what he does. But if people will understand that concept, intent, right, and we don't need hate speech legislation. What we need is people to be prosecuted under incitement. Every country on the planet has incitement laws, inciting people to violence, inciting the public order, the good order and management of the state. It's all there already in criminal legislation. This is about scaring and stifling public debate. But if we behave ourselves and we get professional and we present ourselves and we stay away from white nationalist movements, we stay away from national socialist stuff and this race-baiting stuff, and we present the material in an orderly, could be creative fashion, it could be like the left does with Greenpeace, we could skydive in with banners or whatever. You can do all that stuff in the public interest to have a rational debate on matters in the public interest.
Well, Brennan, no, let me interject here. Okay, yes, that all sounds rational and good, but I mean, let's look at the underbelly of why they are putting this out there, the intent and the way they word the legislation and so forth, is because they don't want a dialogue. They don't want a debate about it because they're hiding something. There's a lot. I mean, they're hiding what's really in the Talmud, right? They're hiding.
Well, that's why the white nationalist movement exists. If you look at them all. Look at all these so-called Nazi movements. They're all kids. They're all Jewish kids. They're all 5'5", little dark-haired, squat, tubby people. These aren't dashing 6'2" Aryan supermen, physical specimens of the Ubermenschen. These are Jewish kids from Haben and Dror and those other university Hillel groups. That's who they are. The ADL and the FBI runs all of these groups. All of them. There's not one that's not run by them. Not one. Why? Because they have to keep Jewish communities in the ghetto. You ask, if you're friends with Jews, ask them, what's the two biggest worries in Jewish communities? You know what it is? And it ain't the Holocaust. You know what their two biggest worries are? Number one, domestic violence. Massive domestic violence and child sex assault problem. But spouse violence, beating up of their wives and stuff. It's huge. Number two, so domestic violence is number one. And number two is assimilation because their sons and daughters are marrying Goy. They're marrying Catholics and atheists. And that's their number one worry. I'm telling you. And so how does BB keep them under control? How does he keep his case officers like, the guy who organized the Israeli state against me, Stephen Lieblich, electrical engineering degree out of the Technion, former Israeli Defense Force. I bet he was in Unit 8200, maybe even a graduate of the Telpia program. He's the head of the West Australian Israel Business Council. And when I called him a Katza on his private email, just one thing saying, Steve, we know you're a Katza, a case officer for Israeli intelligence, and the Australian Federal Police are looking at you. That's all I said. They raided my house and said I had offended him via a carriage device. And there they are on the record on the raid video saying we're looking for stuff from Jet Propulsion Laboratories and a whole host of things. So I hope I'm getting your audience, if you're new to this, your interest into my case. And you're going to go like most people, holy hell, how come I haven't heard about this? That's a good question. So when you see that you can, the Sayanim networks, how they've got to push the white nationalist movement, the Nazis and blah, 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 because they've got to keep Jews in fear. When I had my sentencing and they stacked that courtroom, was full of the Jewish community of Perth, full. And these tubby little grannies, Granny Goldstein, baking her bagels in the morning, was looking up at me like I was Adolf Hitler. Their jaws were open. It was like, there he is. There he is. Oh, my God. I mean, they are in terror. You got to understand, they are told from 4 years old the Goy are going to turn on them and kill them. So be ready. Yes, you've got some nice non-Jewish friends, but they will turn on us. It's God's will, blah, blah, blah. They get fed this crap from 4 years old. It's child abuse, and it has to stop. And that great documentary, Defamation, by that Israeli producer, he goes into that. It needs to stop. They need to stop doing this stuff. And there's a vast movement within Israel. And right now we need rational heads, me included, everybody included. We need to get rid of these Patrick little morons, the whole white nationalist movement, the whole national socialist movement, these morons. There are actually intelligent national socialists who are national socialists, not Hitler groupies, all right? They're smart and they're intelligent and they simply want their country back. They want to maintain their white man status in Europe. And you know what? Fair enough. That's a part of the culture of being in Europe. But I don't know how that applies to the US or Australia, which is built on ethnic cleansing, of course, of the original native tribes. So that's a whole other debate there. But the point is, they've got to keep the narrative running that any moment the Jews are going to be Holocausted. They have to have Iran as a threat in the region to keep the Israeli community cohesive, because it's filled with Ethiopian Orthodox Jews, Yemen, Jews from Morocco, from Yemen, from Syria, and they hate Netanyahu, and they hate all the blonde-haired, blue-eyed pretend Jews from Russia coming in who now run the entire country. They're in all the top positions. The place is fracturing and falling to bits. They've got Filipino workers in there. The place is full of drugs. The youth are drugged up on meth. Half of this behaviour of the Israeli Defence Force, because they're off their heads on methamphetamine and cocaine. It's full of drugs over there, and it's fallen apart. So you bet they need Hezbollah goose-stepping, Hitler saluting. They need the Iranian Revolutionary Guard goose-stepping over in Tehran, saying, things like, we will wipe. I just saw another banner to do with that stealth thing they had delivered to them, the stealth drone. And they've got underneath a banner which is, Israel must be wiped from the scene, as they're jumping up and down on Israeli and American flags. Now, you tell me how such an intelligent, cultured country like Iran could possibly be that stupid to have those sort of visuals, which Bibi just puts all over the television and goes, there you go, that's what we're up against. That's what we're up against.
It's all part of
someone can't...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say it's all part of the agenda. We got 30 seconds. If someone can't what?
Someone can't work it out?
Yeah. All right. If someone can't work it out, what?
Or Hezbollah, all of this stuff, the carrying on, the white nationalist movement, all of this stuff, it's all brewed up to create the hate and put these laws in. Remember, the first place to put these laws was 1917. The first new law they put in under the Bolsheviks was this exact law.
Thanks for coming on. We got to run. We're out of time, my friend. We'll see you same time, same station next week. And I will go through this, and I will post it, Brendan. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend, folks. We'll see you Monday. Okay.
Ciao for now. Bye-bye. Thanks to the viewers.
All right.
Had a tough day digesting news that stirs the mind and disturbs the soul? Relax. Take a breath. Pour your favorite beverage. Run your bath. Bathe in luxury using Clowers Bath and Body Products. Take your senses on a beautiful journey of peace by lighting and adding the aroma of a few Clowers candles. Beautiful scents, no harmful chemicals, allergy-friendly, and burn 50% longer than traditional candles. Store your newfound treasures for future journeys in Southwestern-themed custom wood-burn decorative boxes, personally designed and wood-burned to your specifications. Come visit us and learn more about natural remedies for healing both physical and mental distresses. All of this and more at ClowersCreations.com. That's ClowersCreations.com. Visit us today and experience a healthier mind, body, and soul tomorrow. You'll be glad you did.